Good evening, council members. My name is Mike Mohill. Recently, I came before this council to inform the public that former city manager Jim Starbird had filed a $1 million claim against the city. Mr. Starbird, attorney, stated, quote, "You cannot have these dangerous conditions, especially with disabled people in wheelchairs. Who among our 5 council members want to settle with Mr. Starbird rather than oppose him in court? I suspect Mrs. Freeman, Mrs. Devine, and Mr. Nigerian want to settle." Mrs. Freeman, did Mr. Starbird contribute $1,000 to your assembly seat run? Mr. Nigerian, as a councilman, having worked with Mr. Starbird for years, did a relationship develop? Mayor Devine, being very community involved through the years, did you develop a close relationship with the Starbirds? Mr. Starbird lived in his neighborhood for years, wheeling his wife in a wheelchair. Why, in the past, did he not report to the city where all the uneven sidewalks were? Did Mr. Starbird have his wife strapped in her wheelchair while he wheeled her around? Did he wheel his wife beyond wheelchair safety? Mr. Starbird does not want to take any responsibility for this unfortunate accident, but wants to blame others for his mistakes. Years ago, concerned citizens Herbert Milano and Richard Espiritu came before this council asking aggressively about the policy for sidewalks and road repairs. Mr. Espiritu was very passionate with Mr. Milano. Council members Freeman and Nigerian, who bestowed accolades upon Mr. Starbird at his retirement, would often remain silent when these two gentlemen came before council with complaints and generally waited for a reply from former city manager Jim Starbird. Mr. Starbird stated all was under control, not to worry, and did nothing. It appeared that Mr. Starbird was a miser when it came to finding money for sidewalks and road maintenance, but never had a problem finding money for generous salaries and pension for his beloved CalPERS workforce, Mrs. Freeman. Mr. Starbird threatened lawsuits on the taxpayers of Glendale is to cover up his mistakes, Mrs. Freeman. This is the same city manager who had recommended we hire Randy Adams for our new chief of police. When Chief Adams wanted to move to the city of Bell, Mr. Starbird asked Chief why would he want to move to that corrupt city. Later we found out it was all about the money. Isn't it always about the money? And I'm sad to report that on September the 29th, Mr. Espiritu, the man who came here week after week after week complaining about ADA compliance, passed away. My condolences to his family. Thank you.
I'm terribly sorry to hear that. Yes, Ms. Freeman.
First, I am sorry to hear about Mr. Espiritu. And I just want to correct something that Mr. Mohill said. I believe that Mr. Starbird contributed $100 to my assembly race, not $1,000. But I understand your point. This was on our closed session agenda today. When will we be reporting out on that? Will we be?
There was no reportable item on that. That item was an update only.